Well, as I mentioned, in case some of you have to scoot out early, while shaking hands in the line one Sunday with her minister, this woman came through the line and she was a little bit embarrassed. And she said to the preacher, "I hope you didn't take it personally when my husband got up and walked out during your sermon." And the minister replied and said, "Well, I did find it rather disconcerting." And the woman said, "Oh, no, it wasn't out of disrespect at all," she insisted. He says, "Fred has been walking in his sleep for years." Oops. I'm watching you. I'm watching you. There you go. So, talking about habits. Today we're talking about habits. Do carbs make us fat? Do you believe that? Do carbs make us fat? Does our eyesight dim with age? Do we find it hard to bend over and tie our shoes because our hips and our knees and our joints are deteriorating as we get older? How many of you have seen that commercial on TV now where these two guys are talking and it's, "Well, I'm 40 now, and so I know things are going to start to go bad." And I'm thinking, you're programming your mind with that stuff. Maybe you think you can't quit sugar or caffeine or alcohol, or you're not good at math, or you're terrible with directions. You can't sing. What do you believe? What do you believe about yourself? Do you believe you can rise above obstacles? Do you believe you have a healthy, vital body? Do you believe that you live in harmonious, loving relationships? Do you believe that you can and will succeed? Or do you drift along and at the influence of television commercials and internet articles that define life as aging and illness and fears and doubts and world crisis and national problems? Where are you? What do you believe about yourself? What do you believe for your life? In today's lesson, I want to give you a way to change difficult, often stubborn habits. How many of you have a habit you'd like to get rid of? Change in some way, a habit you'd like to get rid of. Good. Well, I'm going to give you a way to reprogram what Dr. Bruce Lipton calls the biology of your belief. That's where we have to change it, in the biology of our belief, so that we can live our best, most miraculous life. Who here wants to live their best, most miraculous life? This is the interactive part of the service. You can nod. Then I know you don't see it, then you won't go to sleep if I have you raise your hand and nod. Well, it starts with the idea that it is done for you as you believe. It is done for you as you believe. So let's put our hands on our hearts this morning and affirm, I believe I'm an amazing miracle of God. I believe I'm an amazing miracle of God. Now let's say it like you really mean it. I believe I'm an amazing miracle of God. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. The story in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 9, beginning in the 27th verse, there's a fascinating account of two blind men who were sitting out by the gate, and they heard that Jesus was going to be passing by, and that he was a healer, that he had the power to heal. And as he walked by, they cried out to him, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on us and heal us." And Jesus walked over to them and posed a most intriguing question. Do you remember what he asked them? He looked down at them and he says, "Do you believe that I'm able to do this? Do you believe that I'm able to do this?" He knew what they wanted. He didn't ask, "Well, what's wrong?" or "What are your symptoms?" or "How long have you been this way?" or "How did this get started?" or "Where does it hurt? How did it happen?" He didn't ask any of that. He wanted to stir their belief, to awaken their belief. Not in him, but do you believe that I'm able to do this? And the blind men answered, "Yes, Lord, we believe." And it says, when Jesus heard their faith, he touched their eyes and said, "According to your faith be it done unto you." And their eyes were immediately opened. So take a moment as we think about our lesson today and consider a habit that you want to see changed in your life. And again, let's put our hands on our hearts and affirm, "Yes, Lord, I believe." Together, "Yes, Lord, I believe." Now, in unity, we interpret the word Lord the same as law, spiritual law. Yes, spiritual law, I believe spiritual law can do this. Through spiritual law, I can change this. In cooperation with spiritual law, I can do this. It may take a few days. It may take a few days for you. The only reason it takes time is it takes time for us to align our mind, to get into that flow of one presence, one power, one love. And then sometimes it takes your physical body a few days to catch up to the expression of the consciousness, the new consciousness that you've achieved. I always remember when I had grade A strep pneumonia, it was almost killing me. And I was working with the idea in superconscious mind, I am life, I am life, I am life. And there came a moment into that affirmation, I think I've shared with you before in lessons, I am life, and I walked it down into I am life, and then whispering, and then silently, and then there came that moment, and I was healed, and I knew it. But it took 3 more days for my fever to break. It took another month for me to rebuild my body after being ravaged with pneumonia for 30 days. And so you're healed in the moment, but don't be discouraged. Myrtle Fillmore said, if your cells are slow to wake up or slow to cooperate because you've been condemning them and living in the opposite of life and health and truth for a long time. And so stay with it. Stay with it. The 2 men awakened their belief. Let's see, what did I say here? The 2 men awakened their belief in the miraculous and the spectacular, and that's what they received, miraculous healing. They received the spectacular. They put themselves under the influence of what we know in unity as the law of mind action, right? Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind, right? I like to say it, what you think about, you bring about. Kind of the modern day version. What you think about, you bring about. But surely the 2 men, let's look at this for a minute, surely those 2 blind men had thought about their healing their eyesight long before their encounter with Jesus. Do you think? I feel confident that they did. I feel confident that they'd prayed a lot of prayers to have their eyesight restored or to have a miracle. So what is it in the story about Jesus, them encountering Jesus and him asking about belief that brought the miracle of their healing rather than all the prayers and all the stuff they'd been doing? And I think that's an interesting question for us to ask this morning, because a lot of us are sitting with habits and beliefs that we would like to get rid of, or things in our body that we'd like to transform and heal. So what is it that happened in that miracle? In his book, The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton, how many of you have read that? It's been out for a long time. Really? I think Phil would have even preached, I think he preached on it way back at Christ Unity. The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton. Listen to the subtitle. Unleashing the Power of Consciousness, Matter, and Miracles. That's what happens in your belief. You unleash the power of consciousness, matter, and miracles. Well, Dr. Lipton is a research scientist, a medical school professor, and he gives us some clues in his studies about what happened between the 2 men and Jesus. And I want to talk just a little bit about that this morning. But first, let me tell you, Dr. Lipton, along with the substantiation of other scientists conducting leading-edge research in the field of genetics, shared an amazing discovery. This is his primary work. He shared a discovery about the biological mechanisms by which cells receive and process information. That was his thing. He put forth the idea that rather than our genes controlling us, our genes are first controlled by environmental influences outside of our cells, including our beliefs. So we're bumping along a bunch of cells, and we're influenced by our environment. But he said the primary thing in his discovery was we're also influenced by our beliefs to change the genetic makeup in our bodies. He said it was long believed the cell's nucleus was the brain of the cell. Don't I sound like Phil Pearson this morning? Do I? I'm channeling Phil. It was long believed the cell's nucleus was the brain of the cell, but Dr. Lipton discovered that cells can live and function quite well after their nuclei are removed. He discovered that the real brain of the cell is its membrane, the outside, which responds to outside influences, dynamically adjusting every nanosecond, adjusting to every ever-changing environment. So he said, as human beings, we're a collection of cells, and as we encounter these various environmental influences, we tell our genes what to do. He said, most of us are doing it unconsciously. Lots of things happen in our body that we're directing, but we're directing unconsciously, our subconscious, our breath, our heartbeat, all the operations of the organs. We tell our genes what to do. The signals that influence our genes are sometimes direct, and other times they're perceptions we adopt as beliefs. So our beliefs are programming our genes. This amazing discovery is that we are not genetic robots subject to our biological inheritance from our ancestors. Rather, we are mind beings, co-creators of our biology, the biology of our bodies and the biology of the circumstances in our lives. Did you catch that? We are not genetic robots subject to our biological inheritance from our ancestors. Oh, my father and my grandfather had this, and so I have it. He's saying we're not subject to that. We are mind beings, co-creators of our biology, the biology of our body and the biology of the circumstances in our lives. He calls this new science, which is now a new old science, epigenetics. Have you heard of that? No? Just all new to you? Good. I'm not boring you then. So here's a few things about epigenetics, just so we have a kind of an overview to talk about the second half of the sermon. He says, certain circumstances in life cause our genes to be silenced or to be expressed over time. In other words, our genes can be turned off by becoming dormant, or they can be turned on by becoming active. And then he says, what you eat, where you live, who you interact with, when you sleep, how you exercise, even aging, all of these can eventually cause chemical modifications around genes that will turn them on or off. Now we know in Unity, I'm really preaching to the choir today, we know one form of interaction with our genes is thought. That's what Dr. Lipton's work is. And the highest form of thought is prayer. Pop quiz, prayer. So he says in certain diseases like cancer or Alzheimer's, various genes are switched off the state of health. He said the different combinations of genes that are turned on or off makes each of us unique. My genes have different genes turned on than you do. You have different genes turned on than I do. He says there are 20,000 plus genes, and so the different combinations that can be determined are enormous. But if we keep the gene state in health, we could theoretically cure cancer, slow aging, stop obesity, and so much more. Now, Myrtle Fillmore said, I am a child of God, therefore I do not inherit sickness. Epigenetics. Epigenetics. And then she used her mind to talk to the intelligence in her cells to direct them to restore health and life to her body. So Myrtle Unity was founded on this very idea. What I also like is when I looked up epigenetics this week to research it, it's not without its critics. So, Unity's been criticized as being woo-woo or, you think you can cure your cancer. So here's what one guy wrote. The idea that we can epigenetically control our illnesses with thoughts alone is a particularly jarring example of epigenetics-based quackery. Pseudoscience culprits claim that your mind can create or cure disease. This poor guy, scientist. Now, it may be possible that positive thinking, through some physiological byproducts that reduce stress or lower blood pressure levels could impact gene expression over a very long period of time, which may decrease the chance of developing disease. In one study, for example, researchers found that those who participated in mindfulness-based therapy did well. This might suggest an effect of mindfulness thinking or other therapies on the reduction of tumor growth. However, overall lack of statistical significance and observation of preliminary trends demonstrates the potential for further exploration and certainly does not guarantee that positive thinking will cure cancer. And I thought to myself, when I wrote this, when I researched this, I thought about everybody in this room. And if he needs more evidence, if he needs more scientific statistical study, there are any number of people in this room who have been healed from cancer. There are any number of people in this room who have healed from major diseases, who have been recovered from alcoholism, who have done all kinds of things. I mean, if he's just getting the idea that this is possible and he needs some people, he needs to go back and research Charles and Myrtle Fillmore and all the Unity students through the years, doesn't he? Doesn't he? He says, experiments like these should be seen as stepping stones to larger studies to further investigate any possible epigenetic mechanisms that might arise from positive thinking. Their results may bolster the intrigue of epigenetics and its potential, but they should not be used as proof to advance quack agendas or advise others major lifestyle changes, lest the consequences lead to a tragic case of death by quackery. So you can imagine the criticism Dr. Lipton, I mean, he was just saying now that this idea is out there in the universe, people are using it just avant-garde and your thoughts can cure you. But we know the study of truth. We know the study of omnipresent mind and its power to heal. Science is catching up to unity faith, right? It is, quantum physics is catching up, but people like that still have a ways to go. But we know, I mean, you cannot heal from something inside yourself and not be requalified and transformed at depth, right? You're not the same person before the illness or after the illness, before the divorce or after the divorce, before the bankruptcy, after the bankruptcy, before the loss of a child, after the child, recovering from the loss of the child. You're not the same person. Everything in you is transformed and changed. Your very cellular, molecular structure is changed. So we know we have the power to do that. Unity teaches it this way: 3 phases of mind: superconscious, conscious, and subconscious. The superconscious mind is the universal Christ mind, divine mind. And we're told, really, the simplest process is to seek first that kingdom, and everything you could ever need for an entire eternity is there for you. So seek first the kingdom. Superconscious mind, God mind. Conscious mind is your present awareness. It's your thinking. You can direct your thoughts. If I said, think of a blue bicycle, you can think of a blue bicycle. If I said, think of a juicy peach, take a bite, see it drooling down, you can do that, right? You can feel that. Then there's your subconscious mind, and we think of that as the universal perfect secretary that records everything, every thought, every experience about your life, your memories. That part of our mind just receives and stores. It doesn't judge, it doesn't decide on things, it's not directive, it receives. The conscious mind directs, subconscious mind receives. Interesting, the conscious mind operates on what's a 40-bit processor. Oh, I'm sounding like Phil. It interprets and processes bits of nerve stimuli, 40 bits of nerve stimuli per second, right? That's pretty good. The subconscious mind, in that very same second, processes 40 million bits of nerve stimuli. The subconscious mind processes nerve stimuli 1,000,000 times faster and more powerfully than your conscious mind. And cognitive neuroscientists tell us that 5% of our daily life is our conscious mind, and 95% is our subconscious mind. So therein lies the problem when we want to change a habit. Because we go into our conscious mind and think, oh, I'm going to eat less sugar. And the subconscious mind that says, we love sugar, sweet is good, has all that stuff stored in it. Yeah, chocolate cake, German chocolate cake, ice cream, whatever. 5%, 95%. Dr. Lipton says, many people think they can just talk to the subconscious mind and that will change it. But he says the subconscious mind functions like we used to say a tape player. Now we say a digital recording device. Functions like a digital recording device, so that when it records something and you say play it back, you can't talk to the playback and change it. That's impossible to do. So how do you reprogram the subconscious mind to change a habit? It can only be reprogrammed by superconscious mind, Christ mind, divine mind. We know this. We know this, right? So that's why when Jesus appeared to the two blind men, he represents in this story divine mind, the superconscious mind. He infused a higher vibration, a higher bit processor than subconscious mind, higher bit processor than conscious mind. And so he could requalify, or things in them then, as they lifted into that Christ mind, things in them could be requalified, genetically, physically, environmentally, restored to the perfection and the wholeness that is divine mind. The story of the two blind men illustrates a quickening of our mind with the bit processing power of the superconscious mind. When we align our mind with the superconsciousness, we find ourselves, as the blind men did, in the presence of invisible spiritual forces that the conscious mind cannot process or understand. We try to figure out, we try to get an answer, we try to figure it out, we try to make it all happen, and the conscious mind cannot process at a level to do that. So just surrender and allow that higher wisdom and the higher mind to be in you, to do its requalifying. I said, we don't have to know how or what happens. Our conscious mind doesn't have the bit processing power to understand it or figure it out, but it has the power to direct us to move into the higher mind, right? So let's look at 3 ways that we can program the biology of our belief to change a habit so that we can jettison forward into a life that thrives, into fit bodies and prosperous lives and harmonious relationships and no more sugar. That would be hard on a Sunday when we have refreshments here. We'd have to really be aligned. Number 1, Jesus said in Matthew 6:22, if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. He was telling us in his poetic and powerful way that if we keep our thoughts aligned with the superconscious mind, we will be holding in mind only that which is true, and our body circumstances will then, our genes, our genetic makeup will follow that superconscious mind. So the first action in changing a habit is to what I call bear witness to the truth. Bear witness to the truth. When we accept lack of any good thing, when we say we can't do something, we can't overcome something, something's got a hold on us, we bear false witness against God, against supermind. We do 2 things. We deny God's omnipresence, everywhere present power and intelligence and wisdom, and we deny God's love and goodwill. When we say things like, when we talk about poverty or problems or illness, or every time we say I'm sick or I'm poor, we're bearing false witness. We're stating that there's an absence of God's presence in our lives, and we know that can't be true. So instead of bearing false witness against God, we want to recognize that any problem or any bad habit, we recognize it for what it is, which is a mistake. in how we've been programming our genes. Right? A mistake we've made in working with the problem of supply or health or harmony, and those mistakes are caused often, as Dr. Lipton says, unconsciously by ignorance or by blindness. That's why it's key what Jesus did when he restored sight to the blind men. He asked them, what do you believe? What are you focusing on? Where's your belief? Because that's lifting your belief into the divine mind is where your change will happen. To change a negative habit, we stop bearing false witness and we courageously face the condition in the positive knowledge that it is not true and that it has no place in our circumstances, which are filled with God's omnipresence. If God is everywhere present, then this problem has no possible power because it's filled with God also. And when we vigorously deny every appearance of negativity and refuse to accept a false fact or a mistake in programming, we've taken the first step toward erasing the negativity and changing the habit. The second step to changing the habit is get to the right answer, to the right programming by going back of the problem to the spiritual principle that underlies it. Now we know this because we study the 12 powers. If you have a problem of illness, you want to get to the, you want to make intelligent use of your understanding to get to the spiritual principle of divine life and health. If you have a problem of supply, you want to make intelligent use of your understanding to get to the spiritual principle of divine substance. If you have a problem with weakness with this habit, you want to use your intelligence to get to the spiritual principle of strength. And in that superconscious mind, you want to hold that idea, that perfection of strength, and let that program your genes. And it'll requalify not just your physicality, but the physicality of your circumstances, the body of your affairs, as well as the body of your life. We keep our thoughts aligned with superconscious mind and allow Spirit to reveal what life idea, what spiritual principle is trying to come forward. Because when you have illness, you're in conflict. Life is trying to come forth and you're blocking it. You've got a mistaken pattern of thought that's shutting down the gene and making it be dormant. So, last step, we want to follow Jesus' instruction to make a secret transaction with God. And that is, go into thine inner chamber and shut the door and pray to the Father in secret. And the Father, seeing in secret, shall recompense thee openly. We prayerfully acknowledge in superconscious mind there is all the fullness of life, health, love, wisdom, substance for all eternity. And we fill our mind with faith, and we know that whatever we hold in mind must inevitably find its way into form in our lives. And so the key in the third step is to just accept and allow, to get in that alignment with divine mind, and then just accept and allow that spiritual principle of strength or faith or health or whatever, to accept it and allow it to flow in and through all of your thought patterning, all of your physicality, every part of you. This is bearing witness to the truth. And we staunchly and steadfastly declare omnipresent life and health. And that's bearing witness to the truth. That's building the mental musculature to effect the change. You are co-creators. You are co-creators. But your part is to build that mental musculature in consciousness to be able to be in Christ mind and to live from divine mind. So, vigorously, number one, vigorously deny every appearance of negativity and refuse to accept a false fact. Number two, make intelligent use of spiritual principle. Number three, make that secret transaction with God where you gratefully and joyfully accept and allow the change of the habit that you're asking for. Got it? Be a pop quiz later. Fill in the blank. So today I want to invite you to start believing in greater things for your life. You can do anything. Christ in you. Through Christ in you, you can do anything. We know this. Spirit doesn't provide for us to be a little happy, slightly blessed, or partially healed. Right? But somehow we live that way. So let's take it all on and enjoy today. Let's close our eyes for a minute and recognize for just a moment, affirm, put our hands on our hearts. I believe I am God's miracle of love. Together, I believe I am God's miracle of love. In loving presence, we know that your ways are not our human ways. They're higher than and better than what our conscious mind can conceive and believe. The things that seem impossible to the human self are possible in God. Yes, Lord, I believe. Together, yes, Lord, I believe. And when Jesus heard this, he marveled at their belief. And he said to them, it is done for you as you believe. And so it is. Together we all say, Amen.